Hey, I'm Kevin, and this is HFX by Bike, a channel all about getting around Halifax by bike. Normally when I do a spotlight video on a piece of bike infrastructure somewhere around the city, I'll follow up with a Let's Fix video, trying to improve what's already been put in place. Of course, that means I can't comment on parts of the city that either don't have bike infrastructure or where there are large gaps in the network. That's where dead zone videos come in. I take a part of the city where there's not really much bike infrastructure, and I try to plot out what a robust bike network would actually look like in that part of the city. In today's video, I'm going to be covering West End Halifax on the peninsula, which for the purposes of this video, I'm going to be defining as the space between Joe Howe Drive in the west, the Windsor Street Exchange in the north, Windsor Street in the east, and Jubilee in the south. Unlike the last dead zone I covered, the West End actually already has several pieces of bike infrastructure running through it. This part of the network suffers more from a large number of almost connections, parts of the network that enter the West End but don't connect to anything else. Going from west to east, we have the Chain of Lakes Trail along Joe Howe Drive, which connects relatively smoothly onto some traffic-calmed local streets that function as a de facto bikeway. This then connects up to the Bears Road multi-use path, which connects to another traffic-calm street at George Daphne. From here, the network continues along the Liverpool Bikeway as far as the Windsor Street painted bike lanes. These lanes form the main spine of the bike network in the area, but also happen to form the easternmost bracket of West End Halifax. They don't connect to anything in the north, but they do connect to the new protected bike lanes on Almon Street, the Allen Oak Bikeway, the Halifax Commons via Wellsford, and the Vernon Bikeway via the Windsor-Quingate connector. In the far south, there's also a connection to the Halifax Urban Greenway via Conrose Park, although it doesn't actually connect to anything else in the West End. There are some really easy moves we can make right off the bat. The first is just to extend the Almond Street bike lanes down to George Daphne. This is a preferred path by cyclists because it's more direct and has a signalized crossing at Connaught, whereas the parallel Liverpool Bikeway has an indirect path and a forced dismount. That's not to say that Liverpool can't be a bikeway, just that independent of anything else, the Almond bike lanes should connect across to the western portion of the network. Moving bikes east to west is the whole point of them after all. Both sides of the West End have north-south bike corridors, but the center is a bit of a desert. We also have the Urban Greenway peeking into the southern edge of the area, but it doesn't connect to anything, so let's address that. There are two main approaches that come to mind. The first is to add protected lanes along Connaught. The structure of Connaught is a 4-lane road with each side separated by a large green median. Each side is roughly 8 meters curb to curb, meaning that a standard 1.5 meter wide bike lane can easily fit alongside either two slightly oversized traffic lanes or a single transit compatible lane and a standard traffic lane. That is, the total number of traffic lanes remains unchanged, but we just add bike lanes on each side. There would need to be some rethinking of how things work at the intersections, but there doesn't seem to be an obvious reason why bike lanes can't run continuously between Windsor Street in the north and Conrose Park in the south. This approach has the advantage of allowing cyclists to use the high-efficiency north-south path that drivers benefit from, but without actually impacting traffic. The second option would be to create a bikeway one block to the east along Connolly and Elm, roughly following the same route as Connaught. The main drawback of this approach is that to be functional, the bikeway would need facilitated crossings at each of the 5 major roads that it would intersect with. Under that scenario, the more people that bike along a hypothetical Connolly Bikeway, the more disruptive it would be for motor vehicle traffic getting on and off the peninsula. Ironically, having both Connaught bike lanes and Connolly Bikeway probably solves this issue, with the former being specialized for longer distance commuter trips and the latter being specialized for trips within the West End, connecting things like schools and residential neighborhoods together. In the first Dead Zone video, I mocked up a multi-use path running along Quinpool Road as far as Woodlawn Terrace. There seems to be enough space to fit it in without disrupting the existing road configuration, so I'll add it to this map too. If you want to learn more about how I laid that out, you can go check out that video, which should be appearing on the screen now. It's really intuitive to add bike lanes to Quinpool to connect to the network closer to downtown, but that stretch of road is theoretically going to be part of the city's bus rapid transit network at some point in the future, so the space is spoken for, at least as far as this video is concerned. The entire area uses bikeways, so I'm going to add a new one south of Quinpool, running mostly along Norwood. The pathing is a little bit convoluted, but as long as there are facilitated crossings at the major roads, this would still be a mostly efficient path through the area and would connect up with several other parts of the bike network along the way. At this point, we've got a relatively dense network along the eastern edge of West End Halifax, but there's still some noticeable gaps, with select neighborhoods not being well connected. I'm going to add some bikeway paths in Westmount to connect to what's eventually going to be the West End Mall future growth node. This is going to be both a high-density residential and commercial neighborhood and a major transit hub, so connecting it to the bike network is a bit of a no-brainer. Westmount is already a low-traffic neighborhood by design, so this mostly involves making it easier for bikes to cross Mumford. Because this area is going to be so important to the West End in the future, I'm going to add another bikeway connection, this time along Romans. The section running through the current West End Mall looks pretty indirect, but that's just a function of how the roads are currently laid out. The entire neighborhood is going to be redeveloped, so it probably won't be quite as janky in the future. We still have a low coverage area in the southwest of the project zone, in the space around the Armdale Roundabout. All of the other changes I've made are relatively pain-free in terms of improving bikeability, but the only ways to fill this in for this part of the city is likely going to involve eating a traffic lane. For instance, Joe Howe Drive between the Roundabout and Highway 102 is 4 lanes. All of the lanes connect to something, so absorbing one for bikes does actually change how traffic works in the area. The same applies to running bike lanes up Chebucto. We can do that, but I wanted to focus on the comparatively pain-free things that we could add to the bike network to make getting in around and through the West End of Halifax by bike a little bit easier. For that reason, I'm going to drop them from the final map. Thanks for watching through to the end of the video. Those are some ways I thought of to improve the bike network in West End Halifax. Let me know in the comments which elements you would change and if I missed anything that you think is important. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more videos all about getting around Halifax by bike. That's it for this one. As always, thanks for watching, and see you next time.